She noticed him before she noticed anything else. The way he stood at the gate, as if the world had suddenly gone quiet around him. It was such a tiny moment, a fleeting expression on a young man's face, but it pulled at her heart with a strange urgency she didn't expect. Leora had come out only to bring in the laundry, nothing more. Yet there he was, her husband's nephew, Arlen, leaning against the fence with a look that didn't belong on someone barely in his early 20s. It was the kind of lost expression someone wore when trying not to fall apart. She had seen him cheerful before, even playful, visiting their home during holidays. But tonight, something had shifted in him, and even from several steps away, she felt the heaviness he carried. The evening light softened around him, brushing gold against his tired eyes. When he finally lifted his gaze toward her, she felt a little jolt inside, an echo of someone else's hurt tugging on her own quiet empathy. Leora stepped closer, hugging the folded sheet to her chest. "Arlen?" she asked gently. He blinked, as if waking from a long thought. "Oh, hi, Aunt Leora," he said, voice thin but polite. "Sorry, I didn't mean to just show up." She shook her head. "You never need a reason to come here. Are you all right?" For a heartbeat, he hesitated. Then he tried to smile, but it faltered halfway. "I just needed a place to breathe for a minute," he murmured. Something in those words pressed directly against her heart. She didn't know why, but she felt an instinct to step closer, like she needed to shield him from whatever storm he'd walked through. "Come inside," she said softly. "You don't have to explain anything now." Arlen hesitated again, his eyes flicking briefly toward the house. "Is Uncle Theron home?" Leora shook her head. "He's working late, but you know you're safe here." Only then did his shoulders drop in relief, just a little. "Okay," he whispered. As she guided him toward the door, she noticed how quiet his footsteps were, as if he didn't want to disturb anyone, as if he didn't think he deserved space. Inside, she made tea, chamomile, the one he always drank when he was younger. She remembered how Theron used to tease him for it, calling it a gentle person's drink, and how Arlen never minded. He sat at the small kitchen table, hands wrapped together, staring down at them as though afraid they might tremble. Leora set the cup in front of him. His voice came out barely audible. "Thank you." She didn't push him. She just sat across from him and let the silence settle softly between them. The kind of silence that holds space, not pressure. After a moment, he exhaled shakily. "I left home for a bit," he whispered. "I couldn't stay there today." Her chest tightened, but she kept her voice calm. "Did something happen?" Arlen shook his head, but the motion wasn't convincing. "It's nothing dramatic, nothing anyone would care about, really. I just felt out of place. Like I was disappointing everyone without meaning to." His fingers tightened around the warm cup. That was when she saw the shimmer of helplessness in his eyes. Not rebelliousness, not anger, just quiet pain. And something inside her shifted, an instinctive, protective pull she didn't fully understand. She reached across the table, placing her hand gently near his, not touching, just close enough to remind him he wasn't alone. "Arlen," she said softly, "you don't ever have to hide that kind of pain, not here." He blinked rapidly, trying to keep composure, and for the first time since he arrived, the corner of his mouth lifted. "Aunt Leora, you always know how to make things feel less heavy." Her heart warmed at the sincerity in his voice. Right then, she became aware of something delicate forming between them, something soft, quiet, and full of unspoken understanding. Not romantic, not forbidden, just a fragile moment of human comfort. And somehow, she sensed this was only the beginning of something far more complicated than she could yet name. The kettle clicked softly behind her, but neither of them moved. They only sat there, sharing a silence that felt strangely important. Near the end of the quiet moment, she felt a little flutter in her chest, a signal that this story, whatever it was becoming, had just taken its first real breath. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. But as Arlen lifted his eyes to hers again, there was something new in them, something that made her breath catch in a way she didn't expect, something that hinted the night was far from over. Leora wasn't sure why she felt nervous as she watched Arlen cradle the warm cup between his hands. The kitchen light cast a soft glow on him, brushing warmth over the quiet sorrow still lingering behind his expression. She kept telling herself it was only concern, only empathy, only the instinct any woman might feel towards someone who looked like their heart had been bruised by life. But even then, something inside her felt unusually alert, as if the room itself had shifted the moment he walked in. Arlen took a small sip, then set the cup down gently. "I didn't mean to stay this long," he said, though he hadn't been there more than a few minutes. "I just didn't know where else to go without feeling judged." Leora folded her hands in her lap, sensing the heaviness in his voice. "You can stay as long as you need," she said softly. "No one will judge you here." He gave a faint smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "You always say the right things." She laughed lightly, a breath more than a sound. "I don't always, but I mean them when I do." A small silence followed, gentle, calm, the kind that lets emotions settle rather than overwhelm. Outside, the night deepened. The sky stretched into a velvet darkness, the moon rising like a quiet witness to a moment neither of them planned for. Leora finally asked, "Do you want to tell me what happened today?" Arlen looked down at his hands. "My father and I argued, not loudly, just enough to make me feel like I couldn't breathe anymore." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I'd tried to do the right thing, but somehow it always comes out wrong." She felt a tug inside, something tender and protective. "Everyone feels misunderstood at times," she murmured. "You're not alone in that." He shifted his gaze to her, eyes softer than before. "When I was younger, I used to come here because it felt peaceful. Uncle Theron was always kind, but you made it feel like a real home." Her breath caught slightly, not because the words were inappropriate, but because they were so honest. "That means more than you know," she whispered. Arlen looked away, embarrassed. "Sorry, I don't want to make things awkward." "You're not," she replied, quickly, too quickly. She steadied her tone. "You're simply speaking from the heart." He nodded slowly, as if grateful for her steadiness. A few minutes passed in a gentle hush. Leora stood to refill his tea, her movements quiet and deliberate. But when she turned back, she found him staring at the table, not avoiding her, just lost in his thoughts. She set the refilled cup down. "You don't have to pretend to be fine," she said. He exhaled through his nose. "I don't know how to be anything else." Her heart squeezed. She moved back to her seat, leaning forward slightly. "You're allowed to be human, Arlen. You're allowed to feel overwhelmed. It doesn't make you weak." His voice softened. "You say it like it's simple." "Not simple," she corrected, "just true." The intensity in his eyes made her shift slightly, not because she felt uncomfortable, but because she felt seen, more seen than she'd expected on a quiet night like this. A faint wind brushed against the windows. The kitchen clock ticked steadily, filling the moments they didn't rush to fill with words. Finally, Arlen whispered, "Aunt Leora, I didn't come here just because I was upset. I came because when everything feels wrong, you're the only person I feel safe around." Her breath stilled, not in alarm, but in surprise, a soft, deep kind that warmed her chest and confused her all at once. She answered carefully, gently, "I'm glad you feel safe here. Truly, that's all I want." Their eyes met again, and something quiet passed between them. Unspoken understanding, fragile but unmistakable. Leora stood, suddenly aware of how late it was. "Come," she said softly. "Let me find you a blanket. You can rest on the sofa for a while." He nodded, but his gaze lingered on her a second longer than before. And she felt it again. Something shifting, something delicate, something neither of them had intended. As she stepped toward the hallway closet, she heard him whisper behind her, almost to himself, "Thank you for letting me be here." The words followed her like a soft echo, and even though she moved calmly, her heart wasn't calm at all, because she sensed, without fully understanding, that this night was about to lead them toward a truth she wasn't ready to face. Leora carried the blanket toward the living room, trying to focus on the simple steps beneath her feet, but each one felt strangely heavier than the last, as if the quiet weight of Arlen's words followed her from the kitchen. She paused near the hallway light, taking a breath. It was only concern, she told herself again, only the natural urge to help someone hurting. Yet a soft tremor of unease threaded through her heart. Not fear, but awareness. Awareness of something gentle forming, something they hadn't spoken aloud. When she returned, Arlen was sitting on the edge of the sofa, elbows on his knees, fingers woven together, like he was holding on to something invisible. The soft lamplight settled over him, making him look even younger, as if the world had drained the strength from him in a single day. She set the folded blanket beside him. "You can stay here for as long as you want tonight," she said quietly. His eyes lifted to hers. "I won't be in the way?" "Never," she replied, her voice warming instinctively. "Your family." The word felt safe, grounding. She held on to it, even as his expression softened with gratitude, so much gratitude that it nearly startled her. Arlen picked up the blanket and let his fingers rest on its edge. "I know Uncle Theron thinks I'm strong," he murmured, "but sometimes I feel like I'm barely holding myself together." The confession slipped out of him like a long-hidden truth. Leora sat in the chair across from him, leaving a gentle space between them. "You don't have to be strong all the time," she said. "No one expects constant strength, not even your uncle." Arlen looked down, then laughed quietly. Not a happy sound, but a surprised one. "Maybe not, but I expect it from myself." "That's the hardest expectation to break," she whispered. His eyes flickered up to hers again, more open now. "You're easy to talk to," he said. She swallowed a little. "I'm glad." "No," he said softly, shaking his head a little. "I mean, really easy. Like you hear what I'm not saying." The words landed deeper than she expected. She felt her shoulders soften as she leaned back slightly, breathing in the weight of the moment. "Sometimes pain speaks quieter than words," she replied. "You just have to listen closely." Arlen's gaze gently steadied on her, steady enough that she felt her pulse jump, just once. She looked away, not out of discomfort, but to slow her racing thoughts. The night had settled around the house like a heavy blanket, wrapping them in a silence that felt strangely intimate. The kind that held sincerity without overstepping. After a moment, Leora stood. "Let me get you some water," she murmured. But when she turned to leave, his voice reached her in a careful whisper. "Please, don't go too far." She stopped. The words weren't clingy or dramatic. They were soft, almost childlike, coming from someone trying desperately not to feel alone. "I won't," she replied. She returned with the water, setting it beside him. He took it, murmuring a quiet thanks before sipping. The tension in his shoulders finally eased. Then, very slowly, he leaned back against the sofa cushion, letting the weariness catch him. "You ever feel like a single day can take the breath out of you?" he asked. "All the time," she said with a gentle laugh, "but nights like these help me find it again." He closed his eyes briefly, absorbing her words. "Leora," he whispered, dropping the title this time so naturally that she barely noticed until her heart fluttered at the sound. You make things feel safe. She clasped her hands together to steady herself. I'm glad I can give you that. Silence stretched between them again, soft, warm, almost fragile. She watched him breathe slowly, the weight on him finally easing enough for him to find a quiet corner of rest. But beneath that peace, something else stirred. Not inappropriate, not alarming, just an unspoken tenderness neither of them fully understood. And she knew this night was changing something, inch by inch. Leora glanced toward the front door, half expecting Theron to walk in early, though she knew he wouldn't. She wasn't hiding anything. She wasn't doing anything wrong. Yet a strange ache settled gently in her chest, a feeling she couldn't quite name. As she turned back toward Arlen, she saw his eyes open slightly, watching her with a quiet trust that tightened her throat. "Will you sit here a little longer?" he whispered. Her breath caught. She wasn't sure what she should do, but she knew what her heart was urging her toward. And with that uncertainty hanging softly in the air, she stepped closer to the edge of a moment she wasn't sure she should cross. Leora hesitated beside the chair, her fingers resting lightly against the wooden back. Arlen's request echoed in her chest, soft, unsure, but full of a trust she didn't want to mishandle. "Will you sit here a little longer?" he had asked. Not clingy, not demanding, just a quiet plea from someone who had been carrying too much for too long. She nodded gently and took her seat again, keeping a careful distance even as her heart leaned closer without her permission. Arlen exhaled, a fragile breath of relief. Then he wrapped the blanket around his shoulders and sank deeper into the sofa. His posture softened, but his eyes remained open, watching her like her presence grounded him. "I didn't expect today to end like this," he murmured. She offered a gentle smile. "Life rarely warns us before shifting." He let out a soft, humorless laugh. "Feels like it shifted too much all at once." "Maybe," she replied, "but sometimes the unexpected nights are the ones that stay with us." His gaze hovered on her, thoughtful and uncertain. "You really think so?" She nodded. "I do." A small silence followed, the comfortable kind that had grown between them more naturally than she expected. It surprised her just how easily he confided in her, and how instinctively she wanted to help him carry whatever hurt he'd brought to her door. After a moment, Arlen spoke again, voice low but steadier than before. "When I was younger, after my mom passed, I didn't know how to be around people. Everyone kept treating me like I was fragile." He swallowed. "Except you." Leora's breath caught gently in her chest. "I never wanted you to feel fragile," she said softly, "just human." "That made all the difference," he whispered. Her heart warmed, but in that warmth was a thread of something else, a careful awareness, a boundary she knew she must navigate with tenderness and clarity. She folded her hands neatly in her lap. "I'm still here for you," she said, "just like back then." Arlen nodded, eyes softening. "That's why I came here tonight." His honesty struck something deep in her, something protective, something maternal, something quietly emotional. But none of those feelings were inappropriate. They were simply layered with the complexity of caring deeply about someone who was hurting. She leaned forward slightly. "Whatever happened today, it doesn't define you." He stared at his hands. "Feels like it does." "Then let tonight define something else," she said gently. He looked up, confused. "Like what?" "Like the fact that you're not alone," she whispered. "Not tonight." A soft, fragile quiet settled around them, the kind that slips into the heart without asking permission. Arlen shisked slightly, the blanket sliding down his shoulder. Leora instinctively reached forward to fix it, then paused midway, unsure. But Arlen's voice broke the hesitation. "It's okay," he murmured. "You can." So she gently pulled the blanket back up, making sure he was warm. Their hands didn't touch, but the closeness was enough to make her pulse jump with an emotion too tender to name. Arlen's eyes lifted to her again. "You're really kind to me." "I'm trying," she said softly. "No," he whispered, voice almost a breath. "You're more than kind. You care." She inhaled slowly, keeping her voice steady. "I care about you as family. I always have." His eyes softened at her words. "I know. And that's enough. More than enough." The sincerity in his tone eased something inside her, reassuring her that he understood the boundaries she held dear, even without her speaking them aloud. For a moment, neither of them moved. The clock ticked softly in the background, the wind brushed against the windows, and the house felt wrapped in a kind of fragile peace. Finally, Leora stood, brushing her palms lightly down her sides. "You should rest," she said gently. "It's been an overwhelming day." Arlen nodded, though his eyes lingered on her as if afraid she might disappear if he blinked. "Will you stay close?" he asked quietly. "Just until I fall asleep?" She hesitated, only for a heartbeat. Then she nodded. "Yes, I'll stay." She sat back down, close enough for him to feel safe, far enough to keep everything grounded and respectful. Arlen closed his eyes slowly, his breathing evening out. But Leora's heart did not settle so quickly, because even in this calm moment, she sensed a deeper truth forming quietly in the shadows of her thoughts, something she had not dared to acknowledge yet. And she knew that when morning came, she would have to face whatever this quiet shift meant. As Arlen drifted toward sleep, he whispered one last fragile sentence: "I don't want this night to end." And Leora's breath trembled, knowing that the night still held more weight than either of them realized. Leora sat quietly in the chair, watching the rise and fall of Arlen's breathing as he drifted into an exhausted sleep. The blanket wrapped around him softened the sharp edges of his earlier pain, and for the first time that night, he looked peaceful. She let out a slow breath, trying to calm her own thoughts. The house felt different. Hushed, meaningful, holding the weight of emotions neither of them expected to share. But everything had remained gentle, respectful, and innocent, just a quiet night of two people finding comfort in honesty. Still, her heart wasn't steady. She watched him for another moment, then slowly stood, walking to the window. The moon hung low, casting silver light across the room. She pressed a hand lightly to her chest, trying to understand the ache she felt. Arlen wasn't just hurting, he was searching for steadiness. And she had given it to him because someone needed to. But somewhere along the way, the night had touched something deeper in her, something soft, something she didn't fully understand. After a while, she went to her room to rest, leaving the door slightly open in case he needed anything during the night. Sleep didn't come easy. Her thoughts kept circling back to him, his lost expression at the gate, his whisper asking her not to go too far, the vulnerability in his voice when he said he felt safe with her. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't forbidden. It was human, deeply, painfully human. And that truth allowed her to finally close her eyes. When dawn approached, she woke to the faint sound of movement in the living room. The house was quiet, except for the soft creak of the sofa cushions. Leora slipped out of bed, still in her long robe, and stepped into the hallway. Arlen stood near the window, arms folded, staring outside with a thoughtful stillness that surprised her. He turned when he heard her. "Aunt Leora, sorry, I didn't mean to wake you," he said gently. "You didn't," she replied. "Did you sleep at all?" "A little," he murmured. "And I'm sorry for last night, for everything I put on you." She shook her head firmly. "You didn't put anything on me. You just needed someone to listen." He looked at her with gratitude, but there was something else in his eyes now. Clarity, maybe? Or courage? "I need to tell you something," he said softly. A small knot formed in her stomach. "Go ahead." Arlen took a slow breath. "Last night, I was overwhelmed, and I leaned on you more than I should have. But I know where the line is, and I respect that line. I hope you know that." Her breath eased a little. "I do know." He nodded, relieved. "You're important to me," he continued, "but not in a way that should ever make things complicated for you or Uncle Theron." Leora felt the truth settle warmly in her chest. "You're important to me too," she whispered, "but you're right. We need to keep this steady, honest, healthy." He smiled, soft, ashamed, grateful. "I want to be better," he said. "That's why I came here, because I knew you wouldn't judge me while I figured myself out." She stepped closer, gently placing a hand on his arm. Not intimate, just comforting. "You'll get there," she murmured, "and you're not alone in trying." His eyes softened again. "I won't forget last night." Not because of anything complicated, but because you were there when no one else would have known how to reach me. The tenderness of his words warmed her, but in a way that felt grounded, safe, appropriate, sincere. She smiled. "I'm glad I could help." He exhaled slowly, as if letting go of a weight he had carried for too long. "I should probably talk to my father today," he said, "and maybe stop being so afraid of disappointing people." "You're allowed to take it slow," she whispered. He nodded. For a moment, they stood quietly in the golden hush of early morning. The night's emotions still hung lightly between them, but transformed, gentler now, clearer, understood without confusion. "Can I come by again sometime?" Arlen asked softly. Not in panic this time, just to talk. She smiled warmly. "Of course, you're always welcome here." He let out a small breath of relief. "Thank you, Aunt Leora, truly." As he reached for the door, sunlight touched his face, and she realized something quietly beautiful. He no longer looked lost. And as the door closed behind him, the house felt lighter too, filled with the soft truth that sometimes the heart moves simply because it's human, because it cares, because compassion is not a line to fear crossing. Leora stood still for a long moment, letting the peace of morning settle around her. The night had changed something in both of them, not into something forbidden, not into something dramatic, but into something honest. A reminder that gentleness can save a heart already half broken, and that sometimes all someone needs is a place to breathe again.